He once talked about cutting $2 trillion from the US budget. $2 trillion is more than the entire discretionary budget. So cutting $2 trillion never was going to happen. And he concentrated on the workforce, but the workforce is less than 5% of the budget. So far we've not seen any appreciable savings. They keep talking about it, but it's always debunked when people look at the real numbers. So exactly what's going to happen on that front, I think we don't know. There have been previous more serious efforts, like in the Clinton administration, to think about the government and to try and make it more efficient, and they've done some good. But that means modest savings and modest reorganizations. This meat cleaver approach it seems to me, only means that people will soon find out that they can never get the Social Security Administration, that their veterans care is going away. It's hard to imagine how that turns out. Let me conclude with what seems to me an interesting thing to think about, kind of sort of a division in Mr. Trump's world. On the one hand, there's Elon Musk and the tech bros, right? And they really do want to cut the government. They'd like the government to go away so they can do whatever they want. They don't want to have regulations. They want all those things to go away. That's one part of the coalition. But the other part of the coalition seems to be not like that. I don't know how to describe it, but in some ways doesn't want to destroy the government, wants to turn it around, wants to change the things it stands for. And I think of these as kind of the Christian nationalists, right? They don't want to destroy the Department of Education. They'd like it to focus on different things and different values. I think of this as them as Christian conservatives. Sometimes I use the term Christian soulcraft, the things they would like. They want to, that's really the Project 2023 that you've seen so much about. That's very much in that vein, not destroying the government, but turning it to a different set of values. One of those underlying values seems to me a strange kind of manly, patriarchal streak, right? We've seen how many senior women the Trump administration has dismissed. There's also, it seems to me, a funny strain that is not just anti-elite, not just anti-Ivy League, not just anti-people like me, but that thinks that email jobs are a bad thing, that work should be something physical, right? It's a crazy, for me, kind of view of manliness or masculinity. That's underneath. Where this all ends, I think, is also up for grabs. You can imagine it ending with a kind of exaggerated version of what I was thinking about 10 years ago, a country in which California remained thinly liberal, Utah was firmly Mormon, and Mississippi maybe even reestablished some sense of racial hierarchy. Who knows? It's hard to know. The two questions, let me leave you with these two questions. First question is how brutal all this is going to be. It's been pretty brutal already. We've seen that Mr. Trump is prepared to retaliate against anybody who disagrees with him if he can. I lost my security clearance on January 20th because I'd signed a letter in 2019 that he didn't like. I and 51 other senior intelligence officials. So it's going to be brutal, and the people that have lost their jobs, sometimes they get recalled, sometimes they don't. So far the process has been pretty brutal, and we've seen with these issues of deportations, with the administration actually making the argument that, oh yeah, we made a mistake. We deported this guy by mistake, but now that he's deported, we can't do anything about it because we don't have anything to say about it. Just a crazy, and my worry is that we have a Congress that's now entirely supine, doesn't work. It's entirely loyal to Trump. And the courts are both slow and have been mixed. Some of them have been kind of sympathetic to Trump, others have been better about the Constitution. But the thing that worries me the most is that given the Congress, he will actually find ways to curb the power and authority of the courts to do things he doesn't like. What we've seen is loyalists everywhere, people basically appointed almost entirely for their loyalty. This has got to be about the least competent cabinet in American history. I guess you would have to go back to the 19th century. We had some pretty bad ones then, but this is probably about the least competent cabinet the country's ever had. So the first question is how brutal. The second question for me is more existential, and that is, will we continue, as I imagined 10 years ago, to have this civil war that's fought with suits, lawsuits, and marches and other things, or will we really descend into serious violence? I have to say I've been surprised for the last 15 years that there hasn't been more violence in the United States. I thought when we had a black president, that was going to be an occasion for significant violence. Happily, it wasn't. So I hope this continues, but we saw on January 6th what could happen, and so I worry that we won't have this kind of civil war in a very civil way, but maybe not. Let me stop there and get you to ask questions or make comments or tell me things I've missed, things I should have talked about. Thank you. Oh, exactly. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay.
Don't mean to make. Yeah.
Okay.
Let me get.
Thank you very much.
Get back to my water.
Okay, thanks. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, we are now going to have Professor Breakfast responding, and then after that, you will have your comments or questions. And please prepare questions and not speeches. Okay, over to you, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof, for framing the discourse. So I'll just build upon that. My view is that in order for us to understand the current world order, we need to understand the historical development of the foreign policy of the US. The current world order is a product of history. My view is that before the First World War, we did not have multilateral institutions. And at that time, in the early 1900s, the US had an inward foreign policy. And this is quite interesting in my view because it did not involve itself in the affairs of Europe and around the world. So the US got involved in the affairs of the world, in my view, when it got involved in the First World War. And it got involved in the First World War because the ship of the US was attacked, I think by the Germans, Lusitania. Then after that, the US facilitated the victory of the Allied powers, and then there was a setting up of the League of Nations. And then after that, the US got involved in the Second World War, and then used multilateral institutions after the Second World War to propagate its ideas to influence the affairs of the world. Now, if you look at the work of Robert Cox focuses on three things, namely the material benefits, which is the economy, and it focuses on ideas, and it focuses on institutions. And it could have been good, maybe, Prof, if you had touched on how the US has framed discourses to build its empire. Foucault says our understanding of political realities is as a result of what is reported to us by the media. Because discourses are framed by the media, and discourses are not framed just for fun. Discourses are framed to influence our thinking. So it could have been good if you had touched on that. But also, it could have been good if you had touched on how the foreign policy of the US has been underpinned by soft power and hard power, what you call hegemony. For instance, the issue of funding, in my view, that is part of soft power, because that money is not just given just for fun. That money is given to influence. So I mean, the US uses what I call the carrot and the stick approach. they dangle a carrot, they co-opt you. If you don't want to toe the line, then they discipline you. So it's either they use soft power or hard power. And we've been dealt with a blow, and I think the straw that broke the camel's back was the grievance that we instituted at ICJ against Israel. I think that move did not sit well with some political elites of the US in some quarters. And of course, I fully concur with you that the end of this is up for grabs, if I can quote your words. But what beats me is the fact that I've outlined the historical development of the foreign policy of the US in terms of how it got involved in Europe, First World War, Second World War. So you have said, even yourself, in your paper that after the Second World War, there was a rise of two superpowers, namely the US and the Soviet Union. And then there was a political competition between the two. And the US outmaneuvered the Soviet Union because, it fell apart in 1989. But then the question that begs is, why is Trump now wanting to withdraw from funding the security of Europe? Because that has always been part of the strategy of expanding the empire of the US. So I think maybe when we get another opportunity, I know Prof is not stingy with rounds. He will give us another opportunity to reflect on that. In terms of the rationale behind the withdrawal of the US from the security of Europe. Now, my view is that we, as the country, of course, we've been dealt with the blow in a big way. And the question is, what is the way out, especially, South Africa, given the fact that, Trump has made us a political project. I mean, almost each and every day, there is news that is broken, that this and that is happening to the country. Our ambassador was kicked out of the US. There were tariffs which were applied to us. We heard yesterday that Trump, I think the stock and exchange crashed, and the idea of applying tariffs was put on hold, except with China. So the question is, what is the way out for us? And I would argue and say that as a country, we have historical relations with like-minded allies, who supported us during apartheid, China, Russia, the list is endless. I think we should gravitate to those who supported us. But also the world order is not stagnant. We should also make new friends. And not only, I'm not saying that, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we must let go of the US. We cannot. That's a huge market. We need that market. And we must sit at the table and negotiate and find ways and means of managing, not resolving the conflict, but of managing. I'm not saying that we must give in to their demands, right? But I think we need to find a way of maneuvering around these challenges. And also maybe try not to politicize diplomacy. Let me open a can of worms. I think maybe our ambassador was out of line. He was really not supposed to have spoken about the things that he said about Trump being. I'm not talking about the rightness or the wrongness of what he said, but he should not have said that, this person is a white supremacist. Whether that is right or wrong, that's not the issue. I can't come to your house and disrespect you. I can bet my bottom dollar you'll kick me out of your house, right? So that was not diplomatic. So we must try not to politicize diplomacy. I also think that, as a country, we tend to punch above our weight. I'm not saying that we should not have brought the grievance against Israel. But yeah, I think, yeah, maybe we can explore if that was, of course, I mean, what is happening in Israel is wrong. I mean, it's a violation of human rights, but sometimes we are found wanting because, for instance, with regard to Israel, we have a specific foreign policy posture that what is happening there is a violation of human rights. Yet with regard to the conflict which is underway between Russia and Ukraine, we say we are neutral. In my opinion, that is applying double standards. We say our foreign policy comes from the Constitution, which is about human rights. My definition is that foreign policy is how the state projects its domestic values on a global scale. So, like the things that we stand for, rule of law, democracy, equality, development, when we project them on a global scale, that becomes our foreign policy. So we apply that to the situation between what is happening in the Strip and what is happening in other parts of the Middle East. But we don't apply the same principle to the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Why? Because we are taking sides. So we need to clarify that as a country and try to be more consistent in how we deal with these issues. Yeah, I think that's that. I don't want to unpack too much until Prof comes back again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Treverton, and thank you very much, Prof. Breakfast, for your take on this topic. And I promise that I'm not going to do what our referees do in Betway Premiership. You know what our referees do. They become referees and players at the same time. You score a goal, they say, no, this ball did not cross the line, when it actually did. I don't know whether they have an eyesight problem. Then in some instances, what is supposed to be a penalty is not a penalty, simply because they are referees and they are players at the same time. I'll try not to be that. So I'll afford you the opportunity to ask the questions. But I'll just use 2 minutes to summarize some of the key points, not the speeches, but just key points. Prof. Treverton is saying to us, he wanted to talk to us about what was. In other words, drawing from his own experiences, working for government in different institutions that were mentioned in his short bio. In other words, there is something that he went through, or there are a couple of things that he went through during his own time, and he made his contribution to the country and to the globe. And then, of course, some of the things are no longer the way they used to be. And then he outlined a couple of things. I think we're taking notes. Then he went on to say, what will be, in other words, we imagine the world that is going to be after what it was. And he expresses his disappointments on a number of fronts, looking at what has been happening, more especially in as far as American politics are concerned, but also in terms of global politics as well. There are certain things you would have assumed they will take this direction, but unfortunately, they take a different direction altogether. And then there are a couple of points that he made, which I'm not going to repeat here. And he ended his address by asking 2 pertinent questions. The first one, how brutal is this going to be? In other words, what we're talking about, the current the situation that we're talking about, how brutal is this going to be? And then, of course, you can come up with your own answer. He provided his own provisional answers. Then the floor will be yours. Then the second question was, will we continue with lawsuits, or will there be more violence? Some of you might have seen what happened in America. A number of states went on the streets. This is something that we are not used to. A number of states then started protesting against President Trump. And I was asking the question, when I was in Pretoria for the whole of this week. I only came back today for this very important event. And I was talking to my colleagues from 10 other countries I was meeting in Pretoria. But these Americans are confusing me now. Donald Trump is one person who doesn't have an ace card. You know, if you have an ace card, you hold it close to your chest. Trump has all his cards out there in the open. You know what you're signing up for. So when they voted him, they knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. So why are they surprised? which is the same question I've asked with our president when he goes to Joburg. He sees the seat filthy and then he's shocked. And then the question, but Mr. President, where were you? You can't be shocked. We've seen this thing every day. So those are the things that Prof. Then said, not the Joburg one, by the way. And then Prof. Breakfast is saying that for us to understand the presentation by Prof. Treverton, we must first understand America's diplomacy. In other words, foreign policy that has been happening all along. The Pentagon is where things happen. So in other words, regardless of who the incumbent president is, there is a history behind America's foreign policy, which he outlined. And then he made a number of other points, but the most important of which is the use of the soft power, hard power approach, whereby, if like how colonialism happened in Africa, we'll understand that because we're in Africa, that the Bible was a soft version, and then if you try to misbehave, then the gun would follow. So there is a movie called The Bible and the Gun. So then you use the soft power approach, and then if you fail, you try to be smart, then we bring the gun and then we deal with you. And then in his words, he said, they will discipline you using the carrot and stick approach. And then the rest of the stuff then, I think you are all aware of what he said. So with this brief summary then, I will take comments and questions. You are allowed to have one comment and one question if you so wish, but then to afford everyone an opportunity, I would prefer that if you ask a question, you ask one question, then when you are done, you can always come back. Then what will happen, I will take 2 questions here, 2 questions here, and 2 questions there, and then I will afford them an opportunity to respond. When we come for the second round, as Prof. Breakfast said, I will start from this side and come this side. So the honors then is on you. If you want to have as wide a discussion, then we'll keep your questions brief and to the point. Here we go. We start from this side. Preferably a lady and a gentleman, but I'm not prescriptive. I'm saying preferably. Like in the Bible, there is a guy who said, if I had it my way, no one would get married. And then somebody told me the guy was ugly anyway. Okay, any 2 questions from this side? Question, comment? Yes, please. Please go ahead. And please, colleagues, you jot the questions down as they come. Over to you. Or do we have a roving mic? Or is it coming? Or in the meantime, can I borrow yours, Prof? Please give us your name and then your question.
Yes, now I am. My name is Katlego Mofokeng, and I have a comment. Prof, you answered the other professors' questions, and I think you also answered yourself in the sense that you had said that you asked how brutal things would be and whether we would continue to have a civil war that is fought with suits or will descend into serious violence. The brutality that we are seeing, that you had mentioned, is itself the violence that we're going to continue to see moving forward. And I do think you are right, Professor Breakfast, in the sense that, yes, indeed, we do need to not politicize our diplomacy. It is necessary not to punch above our weight. I mean, it is often said about our Constitution itself, or even our legislation, in that we over-legislate and then we fail to implement. So, yes, that is my comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Do you have another hand here? Can somebody please assist me with the roving mic? Oh, there is one. Okay. Yes. Can somebody please assist with the roving mic? Press, okay. Oh, they are covered here. Okay, let's move this side. Can I take 2 hands? I have a hand there. Any other hand? Any other hand? 2, okay. There is a hand 1 and then 2 here. Over to you. Your name and question.
Yes, sir. The name is Maktikhandile Fumbata, the surname. And I have more of a comment more than a question, because what we've actually been experiencing now when it comes to the whole global geopolitical landscape is more like of a shift, you know. And at the same time, I'm actually seeing more violence that is actually going to come into place, because I think there's one principle that that is not actually being practiced a lot, you know, which that principle is justice and equality, you know. Those two things are very important because you can never actually accomplish proper justice if there's no equality. And I think now in this very same sense that Africa has been actually playing the side of how we actually been seen like as the international beggars, you know. That's how everything, the political landscape before Trump was and has always been. And we've always played that role of actually being the good boy type of sense, like give yourself a pat on the shoulder when else most of the things that have actually been done, they are more of benefiting one side, you know, because I think it's the equality part that is actually coming into shift into play because we've only been looked at, if you can actually look at Africa on its own, we have actually been looked at as more like a human capital more than a country of its own. Thank you.
Thanks for that comment. Nice, down here.
Thank you very much. My name is Sandile Hlaisi, and my question is for Professor Treverton. I just wanted to get insight in your own experience with the CFR and all these other various boards that you've been part of, right? My question is, what do you think Trump's game plan is with South Africa? Because if we look at what happened with Obama and Gaddafi, you know, the Iraq situation, there's always a trend when America begins a specific campaign against the country. So based on your personal experience and things you've worked on in the past, what do you think is the game plan with South Africa?
Thank you very much for that pointed question. A round of applause for him, please. Can I note two hands here on my right, far right, not the right wing. Okay, they are still thinking. All right. I'll hand over to my esteemed colleagues to respond. I'll start with Prof. Treverton and then move to Prof. Breakfast. You are free, Prof, to start by responding to... Oh, there is a hand. Oh, now the hands are coming. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Luando, and my surname is Makobo. So I'm just gonna have to comment on what you actually defended, Prof. Breakfast. Especially just to add on the comment that the guy said there about inequality and also justice. Us as Africans, we've always had that unity of serving justice for each other and also showing resilience to each other and stuff, you see, if you guys trying to get to know me. To the sense of that, we have seen things and also we have been through things, but then again, we come back to the fact of that not all of us actually share the thoughtness of having inequality with each other, you see? Because most of the time, we could act like, okay, we really care about each other, but in the sense that when you're not looking, there are some things that could happen behind your back. I don't really know if you guys understand me or what, you see? So like what I'm trying to say is that I really stand what your response was, Prof. I really stand it, and it shows how like as an African, not that I'm moving in racism or like anything, but like it shows resilience of your, like about yourself. You see, it talks volumes. You see, and also, like the power in how you responded. So like it shows much views about everything, and it has enlightened me a lot just to see things with a different eye and stuff. You see, so like thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Then the last hand there.
Hello, my name is Opelisa. So my question is directed to Prof. Treverton, if that's how you pronounce it. So I don't know much about American politics. I do try to follow it. But this has been a constant question that I've been asking myself. From from the way I've been like looking at it from the outside, I always feel like Americans are a bit hypocritical because you guys always complain about Donald Trump, but this is his second term in office. So I don't know. Can you please answer my question as to why does that always happen? Because even now we're experiencing a lot of backlash. Even before in his first term of office, there was a lot of backlash, but Americans still continue to vote for him, knowing his ideas and his ideologies or whatever plans he had. So. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, then as I said, we'll start with Prof here. Prof, you are free to first respond to the comments by your colleague and then to the questions. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks. Let me just say a word about really 4 issues. One is about principles in foreign policy, and I think that's, Professor Breakfast talked about that, and it is, I think most countries aren't very consistent. We've not always been consistent. We aspire to things but don't always do it. I think it's important to hold one's principles. I think that what Israel has done in Gaza does qualify as genocide, crimes against humanity. I probably wouldn't say that very loudly in my own country, but I understand South Africa sort of saying, well, probably in current circumstances, not a good thing to emphasize, but holding your principles, I think, really is important and trying to aspire to them, even as you recognize sometimes you can't act on behalf of them for reasons that have to do with what other folks are doing. The second point struck me was really about equality. Equality is a big problem in my country, as you know. We've gotten more and more unequal over the last half century or a little more. The good news is that globally, inequality between countries has diminished, but within countries, not always. And we're a poster child for equality increasing in our country, so it's a continuing problem. What Trump means to do with South Africa, gosh, I wish I knew. I wish I knew what he wants to do about anything. He has, complete misconceptions about the land expropriation issue. It's all based on nothing. And so I guess I would think when I came in 2017 after he was elected the first time, and my message then was, Trump doesn't seem to have any policy toward Africa, and maybe that's not a bad thing. So this time around, I don't know. My guess is it'll be a relatively minor thing, but South Africa could easily get caught up in the backwash of tariffs and lots of other things. So it is a worry, I think, and exactly what to do. Probably, try and put the best face you can toward Trump, and probably it was a mistake to say sort of insulting things. There's a complicated history to that, but Peter knows a lot better than I do. But avoiding things like that and trying to make the best you can out of a difficult situation, that I think is the best that can be done. Why Trump? I wish I knew the answer. It is interesting that people elected him for reasons that really had no basis, right? They elected him because they thought he'd do better with the economy, that he reduced the price of eggs, but almost everything, he was pretty transparent. It was pretty clear what he was going to do, and people still voted for him. So I hate to think that half of my country is nincompoops. That's not very helpful, but it's, and I'm trying to avoid it, but it does amaze me that people were so bad at even understanding their own self-interest. Right? They knew from the first time around that however populist he might talk, he was not going to help people who are suffering. He was going to give tax cuts to the rich. And we knew that, we'd seen that, but still people were drawn to him for economic reasons primarily, which is stunning to me. Over to you, sir.
Am I audible? Okay. I think all foreign policies are driven by national interests. There is no country that goes around and gives away money like it grows out of trees, right? So America's foreign policy, in my view, has always been about entrenching its hegemony on a global scale. And maybe just to open a can of worms, I know Prof. Mgomezulu said we have a multipolar world order. I would argue the exact opposite and say we still have a unipolar world order, because there's a difference between a great power and a superpower. In my opinion, America is the only superpower. Others are great powers. They aspire to be on par with the US, but they are not on par with the US. If you look at their economies, military, and so on. So I think the US still has an upper hand on a global scale. So now the question that begs is, what is the game plan? Of course, the game plan is to break us, is to make us to give in to the demands of the US. That's why they are disciplining us almost day in and day out. I saw something on the news that they want to impose sanctions on ANC leaders now. I think there must have been a deal which was struck behind closed doors. Maybe the Afrikaners or the DA, they're unhappy about a blanket approach of sanctions, so now target only the ANC. So you can see also, it looks like, in my view, there's also an agenda to erode, I don't want to say the dominance of the ANC, but the power of the ANC. So under the current circumstances, it looks like, I'm sorry to say this, that the ANC might do worse than it did in the recent elections, meaning that they want to change, a government of South Africa that will give in to its demands. There was another question about Africa. Africa has always been a geopolitical battleground. The interesting thing about the continent is that, I'm sorry to say this, almost all the powerful European countries, they have a political, a military, and economic footprint on the continent. America has a military base in this country, even in other parts of the continent. The same goes to Russia, the same goes to France, the same goes to China. There is a protracted conflict between America and Russia and I think France over, what is it called, Nile River, which crosses over 3 countries. And those countries are embedded in that conflict. So they've always been part of our problems as Africa. But also, maybe the other question should be, how far do you repay your allegiance to those who supported you while you were in the trenches? Russia supported us. Should we continue aligning ourselves with them? You know what I mean? I don't think that they are supporting us now in good faith. That's my view. So I think that's some food for thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for these questions, and thanks, colleagues, for responding to the questions to the best of your ability. Now I'll honor my promise. I'm left-handed, by the way, so that's why there was a bias starting from this side. But now I'll be fair. I'll start from this side. I'll take one question. If we have time, then I'll see what we can do. Okay, I've noted one here already. Do we have any one question from that side? Okay, no. So we can have 2 here. We have 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, 1, 2, 3. And then this side, 1, 2. Okay.
Thanks. I'm sorry to insert myself in this conversation. I think it's a conversation that should be done by young people. I want to start with Professor Breakfast. I think we need to have a conversation about the idea of national interest. not what national interest is or naming a national interest, but the concept of national interest. I think it's a really dodgy thing. It's constructed to make states live hypocritically. You know, if you see the national interest, show me the national interest and I'll show you a politician's trick. But I want to talk about something else, because in the first session of questions, something came up which is caught in a very important South African issue, and the thing is most painful to our hearts. And I think since Professor Treverton is here, we should put it on the table. He and I have discussed it many times. And that is, there is a war going on across the world, and it has gone on across the world for 80 and more years, but it's sharpened recently. And its sharpness comes through Iraq and Afghanistan democratic presidents making war. And it has come much more sharper with this present administration. And we should talk about it with our friends in the North, and we should talk about it amongst ourselves. And that is, there is a war going on against people of color. The powerful nations of the world have a war against people of color. And Africa is caught in the vortex of that situation. And this is something we've got to talk about. Because it is, you know, the capacity of Africans to fight back is so limited, as we've seen here. But it continues in an unremitting way. The last thing I want to say, and Greg and I have discussed this many times, we have to revisit the whole question of slavery. I mean, this is a long historical thing, and we have to revisit it, because if we're going to get around these issues, we have to have long trajectories. Thanks for letting me come in.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thanks. The second one there. Your name and question, sir?
Okay. It's just a comment that I'm going to
That's
place
fine.
forward. My name is Tlotliso Kama. To speak on, a question was raised on equality, and America has built its wealth on inequality. There's never been a time America has thrived without perpetuating inequality. It's part of its game plan. And now looking at the Donald Trump administration, there is disinformation that's been pushed forward. It's basically covert action. But these things are not new. They've always been used all along to justify the crimes that America do upon other nations. And during that period, you have served part of the intelligence. You have served with writing down the policies, analyzing the work that's being done. Perhaps you're not part of the actual operation, but in policy and analyzing it, you are part of this intelligence that pushed for covert action and disinformation to justify crimes that are committed by America. And with Donald Trump's administration currently, has been judged poorly. However, we haven't seen much of a strong war or crime being committed on people during his administration, unlike the previous administrations we've had for the couple of years, which has been justified.
Thank you very much. A round of applause, please. We move up. Yeah, the lady at the back there.
Hi, my name is Lindo Kuhlenzete. So mine is a bit of a comment and a question. The question first would be, we are aware of the problems, but who are the stakeholders we should put responsible for making or doing something about it? So what am I talking about? So first and foremost, we are having a problem in our own country in terms of the invisible tax that's going on. So our parents, their salaries are increasing, but the tax is also increasing. So I liked what the welcoming professor said when he said there is a war against people of color. People are trying to, or they're aspiring to be better or getting these jobs whereby they're having these good salaries, but they still can't afford. They were talking about how the invisible tax is actually making someone poorer. So you could be getting 24,000 Rand, but you're going home with 12,000 Rand. So we are aware of the problems, even within our country. Yes, there are problems with the international problems, but how are we supposed to survive in our own country? Who do we speak to, Prof. Breakfast? Who's going to do something about it? Because we are aware, we are discussing it, but who is actually going to do something about it?
Thank you very much, my sister. And not politicians, somebody else. Okay, there is one there, and then there is one here. Then I'll hand over to my colleagues.
Okay, good evening. Thank you, Prof. Nsekelo Lokoyo from the Herald newspaper. Just a small comment to begin with. I do have a question which I'd like both of you to answer. I was actually thinking about this Trump phenomenon yesterday, if you can call it that. Is it such a bad thing, looking at what's been happening in the past decade, especially within America? The gains of the 20th century, I'm talking about the gains post the Great Depression, worker rights, decrease in inequality, all the things you would have seen in your lifetime in America, racial equality. We seem to have reached a point where all those things are being rolled back steadily, but it's been gradual, especially perhaps when you look at the 1990s from your Bill Clinton rolling back some legislation regulating your banking. Post the financial crisis in 2008, you had other laws which were seemingly being repealed right now. Elon Musk has gone hard against the agencies to try and take off their teeth. Perhaps then you think to yourself, is Trump such a bad thing? Maybe this is the sort of upheaval we need to actually jolt people into action to think we are losing our rights. We are losing all the gains we have made. There's a saying, it's a Chinese saying, may you live in interesting times. I myself would have not liked to live in interesting times because it's not a well wish. It just means, may you have upheaval in your life. So we seem to be living in that time of great upheaval, but maybe it's necessary upheaval. I want to get your take on that, Prof. Treverton. Maybe you think, is this the juncture America needs to be in? Maybe Trump is the great resetter. Maybe these are the conversations you guys need to have within yourself. And then you also said something about globalization, about it being thick and thin, whether you are caught in the in-between of that. With the project of Pax Americana, because globalization to a great extent, I believe, has brought peace. There is debate about what that peace looks like. There have been a lot of revolutions in the Americas. But by and large, we have seen a decrease in wars around the world since the World War II. Now, there is
the last one.
Yeah, comment. Quickly. There's a talk in the far right of this spheric security, which is, I think, is driving this Greenland thing as well, this talk about Greenland. Can you just give me a comment about that, what you think about that? And lastly, just a question for two of you. Constructively, what can be done to actually save the relations between South Africa and the United States? Constructively, positively, what do you think can be done to move us forward?
Thank you very much. Then we have a last question here.
Hello again. My name is Katlego Mofokeng, and my issue is with the media and the way in which it portrays certain issues or burning issues around the world. One of the main reasons why we know about the Israel-Palestinian genocide happening is because of the fact that there has been a persistent need out there, be it on social media or otherwise, for there to be information being given about what is happening on the strip. But the biggest problem is the fact that the media portrayed it as if it is a recent phenomenon, as if what is happening in the Gaza Strip has not been happening for a very long time. That is the first thing. We are also seeing the fact that disinformation, particularly within the media sphere in South Africa, is also part of what led to the order by the White House that there be immigration happening within South Africa to the US. This is the spread of disinformation, yes, but it is also a consistent need of media attention towards these type of problems. The amount of media coverage that has been given to certain races and their protests, and the amount of backtracking by the police or even the SANDF has shown us really the power of the media to shape our understanding, to influence who we are and our principles. And we've seen this happen in real time. We're seeing it continue to happen. And my question is, how best can we teach ourselves to disseminate the information first, but also how best can we change the trajectory of what the media is trying to influence us to do?
Thank you very much. A round of applause. Okay, let me start from Prof. Breakfast this time.
Yes, like I said, I mean, I'll start with you. Foucault says that our understanding about political realities is as a result of what is reported to us by the media. So the media frames discourse. I mean, you know, if you watch BBC, you watch CNN, the narrative, in my opinion, is similar. But then you switch on to Al Jazeera. I can bet my bottom dollar you will see the difference. It's quite clear. So it's quite clear that when people are covering stories, they are covering them from a particular standpoint or from certain standpoints. They don't report objectively. There is nothing of the sort, because reporting or stories are framed to influence our thinking, to hold certain views about those issues. And in my view, that is part of the hegemonic agenda of the US. Coupled with that also is globalization, which is not politically neutral. So the media has never been, I mean, for instance, there was a channel of Russians. Why was that channel shut down? The very same people say that they are for media freedom, but then they cannot stand divergent opinions. It's crazy. Yeah? You say you believe in freedom. Why you don't allow people to frame other discourses that are different from yours? You cannot stand that because you want to control the narrative. So that is really a problem, even in our country. So when discourses are framed, you must know that the agenda is to influence the public. About intelligence, yeah, this one is quite interesting. The US, in my opinion, has a history of believing its own propaganda. It's not that they don't know the truth. They know the truth. They're not stupid. America has the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus. They've got, I'm sorry to say this, but maybe even in the city they've got spies. I don't know. So the Americans, they're not stupid. You're not dealing with stupid people. They are very good at intercepting security threats. But they choose to frame their own discourses. They choose to believe their own on purpose. I don't think that Donald Trump is in the dark. He knows that there are no attacks on white farmers, blah, 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 but he propagates his own propaganda to influence people to think in a particular way. And when you repeat a particular narrative perpetually, what happens? It sinks in other people's minds. And then the other question is about what do we do regarding the way things are, because the way things are is not the way things should be. I think, you know, in my view, I think it was Abraham Lincoln who said that democracy is nothing else but government of the people, by the people, and for the people. So I think we should take it upon ourselves to take to the street in opposition to what is happening, and not wait for the political elites to find a way out for us. Thank you very much.
Sorry, way too rich a menu of things to talk about. Let me start with the media. We could have a whole day on that easily. I grew up in a period when we had 3 TV networks, right? And there were 3 nightly newses. And they mostly took their lead from quality newspapers like the New York Times and the Washington Post. So presumably lots of voices got suppressed. But we did have a common basis of understanding. The country basically had a sort of common understanding of what was going on. It may have been biased, but it was at least common. Now we've got cacophonies, all you said, that we have Trump who tells almost only lies, right? If he tells the truth, it's by accident, right? But people believe it, and they have their own echo chambers, so they get reinforced by the people they see on Facebook. Facebook's passé for you all, or whatever else they use. And I think it really is a big problem. It means disinformation is rampant, doesn't get checked. We see these conspiracy theories passing. I guess Mark Twain said, lies are around the world by the time truth has its boots on, and that's sort of the nature of our age. It does mean, as one of you suggested, if you need to look at a lot of different sources, and Al Jazeera is always a good source. I look at it often, but this is a huge problem of our times. On one point about history, in some sense, part of MAGA resonates in American history. For most of U.S. history, as you know, we were mostly isolationist. We tried to stay out of things. We tried too long to stay out of World War I. We finally got in. So this kind of engagement that we've had for the last 80 years is unusual historically in American history. So the idea of an isolationist, go it alone, has lots of echoes in American history. You all have to decide. I think that we sort of stumbled into hegemony when the Soviet Union fell. We used to talk about the end of history, remember, and it wasn't the end of history, but we thought that democracy and free markets had triumphed. And for my lights, we were a pretty decent, benign hegemon, if you want to call it hegemony, but you'll have to make your own judgments about that. The other thing was could Trump be good? Not good, but a good thing to happen to us. Unfortunately, I think you may be right, that I don't see us self-correcting short of a really big crisis. And I hate to say that, particularly since I'm at the end, not just of my career, but of my life. But I think we're in such deep division in the country that to repair it is going to take a major crisis. We thought maybe 9/11. 9/11 gave us a superficial unity for about 30 minutes and lots of bad legislation. So I worry that it will take, and maybe Trump will be the precipitant of this crisis. He does seem, particularly Steve Bannon, that part of the MAGA group, does seem to think that chaos is good, that chaos produces opportunities. Maybe we'll find out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are doing very well. We are almost there. I will take 2 last questions from people who didn't speak, and then we'll close it off. I have one hand here. Okay, then I'll be the second one. Okay, over to you.
My name is Igor. I'm from Brazil, university professor there. I have English as a second language, but in Brazil we don't allow second languages, so sorry about my English. I have a question regarding the mention of Professor Breakfast about hegemony and international order. I would ask you if you could offer us an idea, perhaps that with the crisis of hegemony in the United States, if you agree with that, is also a crisis of international order. And if hegemony is declining, the institution of an international order, the way it was or it has been, that supports the hegemony is also declining. I can perhaps think about that. Trump and the conservative wings in the United States are not supporting the international neoliberal order that the United States tried to implement. They say it's too liberal, but perhaps is too not inclusive. And we have many examples of that, the lack of legitimacy of the international order that the United States helped to create. For example, the hierarchy in the United States Security Council, the selective development investments, not in economic structural transformation for countries in the third world, conditional foreign assistance, military intervention, pressures for weakening state institutions. And I think those examples are clear examples of lack of legitimacy. And my question is, why didn't the liberal or progressive camp in the United States offer real new options for inclusive and new international order, besides, for example, environmental politics? And perhaps it's a lack of proposals from the liberal and progressive camp in the United States. I would like to hear you about that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I will ask my question, then you respond, and then you make your concluding remarks so that you can give the colleague who is going to wrap up. I will start with a very simple and straightforward question. We had Ambassador Ruben Brigitte here in South Africa. He messed up big time. You know me, I don't cover code things. He messed up big time. At one point, he bypassed DECO, and he bypassed everyone else, and then he told us that there's going to be a bomb somewhere in Sentin, something that had never happened. And we didn't do anything about that, isn't it? Now, the question then becomes, was South Africa right by not taking action against Ambassador Brigitte, given what Trump has done with our former ambassador, Ibrahim Rasool? That is the question. Then the last one is a very broad question you can respond to if you want to, or can respond during tea time. We just celebrated the 31st anniversary of the Rwandan genocide, where about 1 million people died between the 7th of April and the 19th of July, when the UN was there, when the OAU was there. Now the question becomes, to what extent can we pin our trust on these multilateral institutions? As you respond to these questions, then please make your closing remarks. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, you know, the concept of hegemony is not simplistic. Hegemony is a multi-dimensional concept with a multiplicity of functions. It's not just about class domination, in my opinion. It's more than that. It has phases. The first phase is to co-opt your political opponents. I believe that even us as South Africa have been co-opted into the hegemonic world order. That's why we are part of the G20. You see? So you co-opt in order to assimilate, but also in order to make your opponents to conform to your agenda. If you don't conform or give in to the soft power, then they use hard power to deal with you, as they have dealt with us. Because now we wanted to be independent now. We want to speak our minds now, you see? That's why, for instance, I can bet my bottom dollar, come September, October, they are going to kick us out of AGOA to discipline us, you see? Until maybe there's a change of heart from on our end. So that's the first point. I agree with you that there has been a decline of the hegemonic influence of this, but it must be borne in mind that, I said this earlier on, the multilateral institutions were established as a platform to propagate the ideology of the US. For instance, and this ties in with the point that you made earlier on, America is the large financial contributor of the UN. That's why they can do as they please and disregard them. If they want to, they can withdraw the funding. Then what? The UN will die a natural death. So the peacekeeping forces and the operations of the UN, they are dependent on the US. Those institutions were initiated by the US in pursuit of their hegemonic agenda. That's why they can bulldoze them. And then the second point is about maybe what could have been done by the liberals. My view is that one of the reasons why there has been a rise of the right, we have not addressed that, why there has been the rise of the right. I believe that at some point before the rise of the right, there was a dominance of centrist. So my view is that when the centrists fail, they create a scope either for the rise of the right or the rise of the left. But the right, they have outmaneuvered the left. They are dominant. Because of, even in our country, you see now there is also a rise of the right in our country. You see some people now, they are becoming arrogant now because the ANC has been weakened. You see, but at some point they were perpetually silent because the ANC, to me, I know it's a broad church, whatever you call it, but to me, it's a centrist party, believes in social democracy. Yeah, I think that's that.
Certainly the question of the international order is critical. I wouldn't say, whatever you say about Bretton Woods institutions and that set of order, I wouldn't say it was done to advance American hegemony. We were 50% of the global economy, so we were dominant in any case, but I wouldn't say it was meant to be an instrument of our hegemony. I think it's worked, on the whole, worked pretty well. We found out later that it underrepresented important new countries like China. We found now that it completely doesn't represent the most powerful force out there now, the private sector, right? I always say that Google is probably a good bit more important in international politics than, say, Spain or whatever middle-sized country you want to pick. So we know there are lots of problems with it, but I don't agree with the idea that it was created as some instrument of American hegemony. It was what the best minds at the time thought would work, and it worked pretty well. That it's now gone and will be replaced. China has its own vision. China, by the way, has more peacekeepers than the United States, so they're now pretty dominant in UN institutions, getting more dominant. What happens to the UN, I think that's a big question, but that's a question for several generations, not for the next few years. I'm pessimistic, as you gather, about what happens next and about reestablishing some decency and international order, but I want to be hopeful. There was one interesting question about Trump and Greenland. Again, that's one of the many things I find hard to understand about Mr. Trump. He does seem to have a kind of a 19th century view of international politics, that it's about territory, it's about hard power, not soft, that the powerful do what they want, the weak suffer what they must. It really is a kind of 19th century view of international politics, and where it comes from with Mr. Trump, God only knows, and probably God's a little confused as well. This Greenland fixations, we get everything we need in terms of security from Greenland as it is, the idea we want to take it over. He also has a fixation with minerals and mineral deposits. Again, a kind of a 19th century view. It's come back in many respects because of our modern dependence on batteries. But it is a very strange view, and the idea that one person gets to impose this view on the world is something I'm not happy to apologize for, but I hate to have to apologize for it. Anyway, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you give yourselves a round of applause for being a good audience? Thank you very much. First of all, for coming and then for making sure that you ask the most pertinent questions. And then let's give a round of applause to my speakers here. Can you please give a round of applause to me? No, thanks, ladies and gentlemen. I'm now going to go to the last item where I will invite one of our colleagues from the Herald to do the vote of thanks, and then perhaps he knows what he needs to do after that. Our colleague from the Herald. Oh, you will be representing them. Over to you. A round of applause for Katlego, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the very beginning of this event, I told you to drink up because the gentleman had had a bunch of papers. And now you understand why it is I told you to drink your water, because we just had one of the most interesting conversations ever. We have absolutely amazing minds at Nelson Mandela University, and a great mind joined us tonight, and we are more than grateful. And in true African, as Tata's children, in true African fashion, the best way to go about thanking somebody is to gift them, right? So first, let us gift our speakers. Before anything, I know where you're headed, yes. Thank you so very much. And now, your bottles are empty. You have drank quite a lot of water. We've seen you walk in and out of this room to go to the bathroom. And on the way there has been a table. And that table looks very delicious. It has many colors, like a rainbow. And as the Rainbow Nation, let us embrace the rainbow and attend to the eating. Thank you very much for joining us.